This is Silph Radio, a Pokemon-centered podcast. Each episode of Silph Radio, we explore a different aspect of the Pokemon franchise. This is a not safe for work podcast. We do curse. It's not safe for kids unless they're really smart kids.
Not to imply that every child isn't a special and unique snowflake all on their own.
But the specialist among you can listen, you know.
Exactly.
We have no affiliation with Nintendo, Game Freak, Creatures Inc., any of them. We are simply a fan production from Secret Room Multimedia. I'm your host, the charming and charismatic half of Fairpoint Podcast, Nathan Kappesser.
And I am Jeremy Vyne.
The not nearly as self-indulgent. Today on the podcast, in Russia, it's known as Lunaya Gora. In Italy, they call it Monte Luna. In Germany, it's Mondberg.
I like that one.
But we know it as Mount Moon.
I didn't see that coming.
You knew that was coming.
Yeah, that's true.
Or, in Japanese, it's known as Mount Otsukimi. Otsukimi, apparently, is a Japanese tradition which honors the autumn moon.
Autumn moon.
It literally translates to moon viewing. So basically, you set up decorations made of grass, you eat rice cakes, and you look at the moon.
Then the translation I'm hearing is Mount Moon Viewing.
Yes.
Awesome.
I love Mount Moon. We haven't done very many places on the podcast. We did Lavender Town, we did Saffron City. This is the first non-city place that we've done. Well, non-settlement place, rather. And I love it. It's so classically embodies the Pokemon adventure to me. It was the first point in your journey, I think, where you were really up to your elbows. You know what I mean? Like you set out in Kanto, you fight the first gym leader, that's your first trial. You go through a couple cities, you go through Viridian Forest, which is, at that point in the game, you're like, oh wow, cool, forest, but it's relatively small. Then you go into Mount Moon. This is it takes a long time to get through. You better bring some repels. You better bring a lot of potions and antidotes.
I'm just hearing that deep, scary, like...
Even an escape rope. It won't hurt to have an escape rope. Be ready to run into some motherfucking Zubats.
Yeah.
So, it really...
You're like triggering PSTD.
PTSD.
Yeah, that too.
PSTD?
I don't know. Post-survivor's traumatic displacement.
It's even worse than an STD. It just really encapsulates, if you'll pardon the pun, the Pokemon trainer's journey to me. The Pokemon trainer being out exploring the wilderness, exploring dangerous areas with only their Pokemon by their side.
Yeah, you leave home, you meet a few people along the way, you make sure to see a few familiar places, but eventually you have to leave and venture to reach the moon.
I think you misunderstand Mount Moon. It doesn't actually go all the way up to the moon.
You don't know that?
There may be myths. Maybe myths. Old myths.
Yeah, exactly. Why is it called Mount Moon?
Well, it's called Mount Moon because, the map describes it as follows. A mystical mountain that is known for its frequent meteor falls. The shards of stars that fall here are known as moonstones. They're not actually shards of stars. They're asteroids. That's just, I guess, because people call them shooting stars. It's weird that they'd print that on a map.
That still doesn't explain to me why it's called Mount Moon.
Because they're moonstones. That basically, it was hit with a comet ages and ages and ages into the past. For context, it's located in Kanto between Pewter and Cerulean City. The area surrounding it is like dotted with craters. So apparently, this area was subject to a bunch of asteroids.
So it looks like the surface of the moon?
Not the entire area. There's some places. There's a road, there's grass, there's trees, but there's also a few barren, rocky areas with big craters, and you can go and see like little asteroids down in the bottom of them. So it's probably called Mount Moon because rocks fall from space. Primitive people think that came from the moon. That's the rock in the sky is the moon, right?
If they're called shooting stars, I would think that they would think they came from the stars.
Well, people call them shooting stars. That developed way after the primitive people, the English language.
Well, that's what I'm saying is that I know that there are certain stories about mountains that were stairways to places, like mountains that were stairways to the moon.
I don't know if that is it, though, because no one ever really climbs Mount Moon. There are mountains that you scale in other games in the Pokemon series, but you don't scale Mount Moon. You can, in Heart Gold and Soul Silver, get to a point on the summit, but you do it through the caves, which, yeah, that's still... You're still... Right. That does make sense, too. And up there's a little pond, and you can see the reflection of the moon there. So it's interesting. And the Clefairy there clearly have some affinity for the moon and the full moon. So it is really interesting. I think that's what we're here to do, is to figure that out. Obviously, as we just mentioned, it is a place where Clefairy live. It's one of the only places where Clefairy can be found.
I could never catch one of those motherfuckers.
No?
Not in my blue game. Oh, God, I tried. Nothing but fucking Zubats.
That's why you gotta trade, man.
Over and over again.
That's one of the reasons it's a big destination for trainers. A lot of trainers are coming to catch themselves a wild Clefairy, or there's a lot of scientists and researchers that come to observe the Clefairy. In one of the Pokemon mangas, Bill and Professor Oak are both there together doing this, and Ash runs into them. In the cartoon, Ash runs into Seymour the scientist there.
I believe so, yeah.
And he has this, a lot of people have theories that the Clefairy actually came from space. And
I know I watched the anime, and I believe that the Clefairy literally were like trying to build a Pikachu-powered spaceship.
No. Seymour the scientist just postulated that the Moonstone was the spaceship which the Clefairy used to come to Earth.
Yeah, but I remember an episode of the Pokemon anime where, like, there were some crazy Clefairy, and they captured Pikachu and tried to use him to power a spaceship after stealing tons of parts all over a city.
Maybe that did happen. Let me see. Okay, the episode you're talking about, it's episode 62, Clefairy Tales, and whatever it is, Jigglypuff's in it. Looks like Jigglypuff has a big role in it.
But I could swear they literally, like, these were some industrious Clefairy. They stole shit from all over human settlements and made a legitimate, working, anti-gravity spaceship powered by motherfucking Pikachu.
I'm hesitant to accept the anime as canon. But
I still think it's interesting because...
Yeah, but I have to take that into consideration. I have to take everything into consideration. But I still only accept the core games as canon because, otherwise I'd have to accept that there's two talking Clefairies, like the one from Magical Pokemon Journey and the one from Pocket Monsters. Mm-hmm. There's so many weird things in different iterations and installments in the Pokemon franchise.
I'm just saying,
but are Clefairy... See, I think maybe they are, or maybe the Moonstone, because it clearly affects the evolution of Pokemon, right? It causes certain Pokemon to evolve. Maybe the Moonstone just affected the actual evolution of Clefairy, meaning not like the way a Pokemon evolves, a singular Pokemon, but the evolution of the species from over millions of years.
I actually have an alternative one to this. I think about the way that we postulated that our moon formed, that a meteorite struck our planet and ripped off a chunk and it eventually became an orbital satellite that became our moon. I've thought about this for a while, and I've thought, well, maybe lunar Pokemon that are affected by moonstones, were originally from where the moon generated from. And that the interaction produces these moonstones, these shards of a meteorite, and it interacts with their DNA much like an Eevee has, based upon environmental effects and elemental effects. You get different Eevees. I think that maybe these shards of the original meteorite strike caused a chemical change that affected their evolution, and that maybe they do come from the moon, but in a way that we don't expect. Yeah. Their original habitat was
part of the Earth, which got... Because this is still an Earth. It's just an alternate Earth.
Exactly. Got injected into space.
All right, so let's take a look at that. The Pokemon which evolve with the Moonstone, Nidorina evolves to Nidoqueen, Nidorino evolves to Nidoking, Clefairy evolves to Clefable, Jigglypuff evolves to Wigglytuff, Skitty evolves into Delcatty, and Munna evolves into Musharna. So a lot of those are Nidorans, Clefairies, and Jigglypuffs are all around Mount Moon.
Yep.
And then you're left with Skitty and Munna, which are both from other parts of the Earth, not in Kanto. Doesn't rule out that other Pokemon might still be affected by
Well, here's
that
the
type
other
of
thing.
energy.
Here's the other thing is that when the moon, our moon, got ejected into space, it was not a neat process. It wasn't a perfect sphere at first. It was an orbital satellite. It partially formed into a sphere by ejecting excess matter as it was orbiting around the planet. Many other smaller, I guess you would say, meteor strikes happened across the surface of our Earth as the moon was orbiting around us. So you could consider that almost like pollination. As it orbited around the Pokemon Earth, different portions of the moon would have been cast off as well, landing in oceans, landing in other continents, landing in further land masses.
And then the energy of those stones would affect the Pokemon that developed there.
Also, if you're going with it being very similar to our form of Earth, then you have to realize that long before Pangea got separated into the different continents, that the moon strike still had happened. So even if you find lunar Pokemon in different sections of different continents or land masses in the Pokemon world, the moon would still have been within the time in which those land masses were connected as one.
Interesting. So is that your stance then? Is that kind of your headcanon? The Clefairy aren't aliens. They developed here on Earth, but from that area?
I believe that they have a strong will to go to the moon.
Not because it is easy, but because it is hard.
No, because it's much like salmon trying to find the original place of their spawning point. Mm-hmm. So they do come from space, sort of. They come from their territorial land of origin, which is the moon.
But they didn't come from space. It's just their former home is now in space.
Right. And so they're continually trying to get back to it.
That is I love that idea because it does make them from the moon and from Earth at the same time. I love that just because it reconciles my need to have them terrestrial in origin, but need to also respect the canon that they're probably alien or connected with the moon in some way. I love that.
I'm glad.
And
I love it too.
Clefairy are probably just the most cognitively evolved of those Pokemon, of Nidorans, Jigglypuffs,
If you look at them, they clearly have a higher order of intelligence, appearance, and appeal to them.
They have rituals. Even in the games, they gather under the full moon and dance around the stones. And in the mangas, they're depicted, they wear necklaces. One of them wore a necklace. They have these evolution ceremonies. They did the same thing in the anime. And there's 2 different talking Clefairies in 2 different mangas. So, like, it was once going to be the main character, you know.
So if you tie that higher level of intelligence with a deep instinctual drive to go back home.
Yeah, they're the ones that are actually developing a culture about the moon. And then apparently in this episode you saw building a spaceship. I'm not down with the idea that the Clefairies have built a spaceship in canon, but I am down with the idea that they look up at the moon and have that instinctual. Now, you know what I think's interesting? Because you know Clefairies have the little wings.
Yep.
And you do see in the manga they fly with it, but I think most time you see them, they're running around. Apparently, they store moonlight, energy from moonlight in their wings, and that lets them fly. And under the full moon, I think they can just fly because the moonlight is already there. They don't have to worry about it. There's enough of it to just float around. But then they can store it to have that on reserve, you know, during the day or on a new moon, which is super cool. Clefairies are fucking cool. They're cool Pokemon.
They're boss. I mean, heck, in Sun and Moon, they've made them a thing now that you can catch almost right near the start of the game.
Oh, man, Jeremy. More evidence, Jeremy. Clefairies are of the moon?
Mm-hmm.
So what's the opposite of the moon?
Sun?
What happens when a sun shines on a Clefairy?
They die?
No, same thing that happens when the sun shines on anything else.
They get a sunburn?
No. They cast a shadow.
I swear to God, no.
I don't know, man. That is honestly the most compelling bit of evidence yet, and I don't think anyone's stumbled upon that. If Clefairies are of the moon... Okay, just in case the listener doesn't know what I'm hinting at. There is a fan theory. We've talked about it several times on this podcast, and it's
Which
been
I vehemently deny.
It's been made abundantly clear Jeremy does not subscribe to this fan theory. Now, wait. Do you think that maybe it might have been the original authorial intent, but then they changed their minds during development?
No.
No, not at all.
If you look at the Clefairies now and the way that they did the sprite...
Well, that's now.
I'm sorry.
I'm saying in the way that I think it's obvious that Kangaskhan was supposed to be Cubone's mom. There's enough evidence for that.
Right.
But they did change their mind, and it's not canon anymore.
Yeah, whereas if you look at the original pixel designs for Red and Blue for Gengar and the pixel designs for Clefairy and Clefable, they just don't match up.
Okay. But the idea is that Gengar was supposed to be Clefairy's shadow, or Clefable's shadow. Might be Clefable. There's a bunch of evidence to like tie that together. It's shaky, but it's not a bad argument though. And the idea that then to add to that, if Clefairies are of the moon and associated with the moon, and Gengar is supposed to be the Nega Clefairy, then when the sun hits the Clefairy, it casts a shadow.
Gengar's up here at night, so...
But still, I still do like that as, hey, if anybody who does believe that, you can take that and like put that in your YouTube video. If you want to credit me, that'd be dope.
I don't give you permission to take my damn moon theory and do that to Gengar. I'll
no, just
find
my
you.
theory about the sun.
Okay.
So, back in Kanto, that's what I love about the Pokemon franchise. So you're a trainer and you're out and you're like, you put an X on your map, you plan a route and you're like, I'm going to go to Mount Moon to see the Clefairy dance. Like I talked about in the last episode, if they do a Pokemon MMO, there should be events that take place that you can travel to try to go witness the Clefairy evolution ceremony. That like there are trainers that like, I want to catch a Clefairy and have that rare beast, or even just I just want to watch the dance. Like researchers that go there.
I would kill to be able to see the 1,000-year Bulbasaur ritual.
Right.
Yeah.
So when Red goes on his journey, when you playing Red and Blue go on the journey, or when Red, the character, visits Mount Moon, there's basically a bunch of other Pokemon trainers, mainly on the surface level. So these are the other people that have wandered into the cave. They're not all top-tier Pokemon trainers, so it stands to reason that they haven't ventured that far. Because the further you get down into the lower levels of the cave, you start running into Team Rocket members who are there searching for fossils. Which, honestly, isn't that nefarious a plan?
It also shows something else that's interesting. You find fossils there, right?
Yes, we're going to get to that too. But as far as Team Rocket members, I don't think that's... So Brock goes there to dig for fossils. Okay. Team Rocket does too. Well, Team Rocket just does it for money. Okay, well, I mean, costs money to dig up fossils, guys. Like, I understand Brock's the Indiana Jones. He probably gives them to the museum in Pewter. He probably donates them and keeps a few for his gym. Keeps a few for himself, donates the rest to science and education.
Science.
And Team Rocket just wants to make money off them. Okay, that's fine.
We'll sell them to the museum.
Yeah, exactly. Who's gonna buy them? The academic community. Like, who cares? That's a good way for Team Rocket to make their money. They're out there earning a living, digging up fossils, which we need people to dig up fossils and sell them.
I don't know. Apparently they waited for your ass to do the hard work and then take it from you.
Well, what happens is near the end of the journey, you come across a super nerd. He found those fossils. He's standing there and he's like, these fossils are mine. And then after you beat him, he's like, okay, I guess you can have one. Which is like, do you bully him into it? Do you like, no, you better give me a fucking fossil?
I think it's like he's worried. I don't think he wanted to resurrect them, right?
No, I think he just was a scientist.
Exactly. He was collecting them and he was worried that you might disturb or destroy one of them. But once you prove yourself as responsible and as a trainer, because you've proven that you're efficient and not a dumbass, and
it's just like if I'm walking around Arizona and I wander into like a paleontological dig, and I'm like, you guys mind if I keep one of those bones? No, the league is funding this. I'm not giving you one of these bones.
What if we like battle for it?
Yeah, well, come on, let's fight. Put up your dukes. Come on, let's go.
Well, we are in the Pokemon universe. I guess if you can
Right, I'm being loose. I'm like going back and forth. I'm like Arizona, and then I mentioned the league, so...
They have Russia in the Pokemon franchise, so...
So real world, I'm just like, come on, let's fight for it.
Put up your ducks. Sigh.
Oh, on that note too, the Mount Moon episode. Oh my God! Like this is why parents don't get Pokemon, because of that fucking stupid cartoon. Because they're like, I am not gonna pay it. I'm gonna do everything I can to shut that. Clefairy, 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 Clefairy. Oh my God! It's like 8 Clefairies all saying it no rhythm, like just Clefairy. It's so fucking annoying.
Duck.
And I was like, oh, that's what it felt like to be a parent in the 90s. You're like, why does my kid like this? I'm always like, how could you not understand? You collect monsters, you battle them, you trade. What's not to like? Oh, Clefairy. So the dome fossil and the helix fossil, Omanyte and Kabuto, respectively. Wait, no, I got that backwards. Kabuto and Omanyte, respectively, can be found here. Perhaps even other fossils, which is really cool because, like a lot of mountains on Earth, you can find aquatic fossils at the top of Mount Everest, which is fascinating. At one time, the ground that made up this mountain was under the ocean, which is a nice parallel and metaphor for, at one time, the rock that made up the moon was on the Earth. It's like the same idea. So there might be fossils of Earth life on the moon.
I would pay anything for that.
Ancient alien astronaut theorists agree. There are fossils of Earth life on the moon.
It actually ties in even further with my idea about, like, the moon being ripped from the planet, right? And you're looking at different impact portions from a larger meteor. Anywhere where you're going to see a meteor that could produce a moon off your own planet, you're going to see a mass extinction event. So if you're looking at fossils buried under Mount Moon might also be more symptomatic of something that we're not looking at. It could be the primary impact zone where the meteor that created the moon came from.
This is what I love about Pokemon. I say it in every episode, but they can take so many thematic influences and stuff and put them into one thing. Like, it works on so many levels because that's where the meteors hit, and that's where you find fossils of extinct creatures. Yes, like that's fucking...
The impact zone would cause a lot of flash fossilization for anything that didn't get vaporized on contact.
And just thematically, from a storytelling perspective, you're writing a story that you want to convey these themes to. You want children to be able to. Sometimes it takes 30 years before anybody notices, Yeah. But
it keeps the interest alive in your head.
Wow, it still works too with the idea of like the parallel to the real world. Like, wow,
exactly.
I love it. That's so cool. And it's interesting to think too that at one time in history, Mount Moon was it was probably underwater at that point. Was it? So when Kabutops and Kabutops, by the way, one of my favorite Pokemon. I love Kabutops. He was a staple on my team for a long time until I realized he sucked.
Yeah, he always seemed funky to me, unfortunately. He seemed like a disproportionate mantis. Like, his joints never looked like they could actually support anything. And every time I looked at that weirded me out. I'm like, he has to have more stuff to his stuff to be able to hold his body together like that.
I think it primarily would exist in water, which maybe the buoyancy of the water would help it support itself, and maybe its body's built more for swimming.
But then his legs were bipedal in nature, and he had legs instead of fins.
I still think it definitely spent time outside of water, too. It's rock and water type, so...
I also have a theory that rock is not inherent to fossil Pokemon.
No, it's because they've been resurrected from fossils. Yeah. I had that theory, too. I'm not sure... I think either way, that's the reasoning behind making them rock type. Whether or not in canon they were rock type 65 million years ago, I don't know. That's great. I've thought about that.
I think it's a genetic chemical nature change from being restored from fossils.
Yeah, it's very possible. Kabutops back in the day were just aquatic Pokemon, water bug type or something.
Yeah.
But it's also possible that they were water rock. Omanyte has a shell. You know what I mean? So some of them, it makes sense.
But if you look at other creatures like Cloyster, who apparently has like a shell stronger than diamond, is ice and water.
Yeah, you can only have two types.
Yeah. So I wonder whether Omanyte would have been considered rock at all.
It's an interesting thing to think about. Yeah. And I also wonder, when they were alive, was Mount Moon underwater?
Or was there a Mount Moon?
They say the mountain was hit with the asteroid.
Exactly.
But again, this could just be folklore of ancient primitive people that the mountain was formed when the asteroid hit, or something like that. Maybe that's what happened. Maybe it was underwater, or it was, if there was a mountain, maybe there was water in it. It was like a cave system underwater or something, And maybe at one time those caves you travel through were underwater, but the mountain,
or maybe they even had underground lakes or river systems.
Yeah, I like imagining that there was both. So there was a little bit of a mountain. Maybe it was the landscape was so drastically changed when the meteor hit. But before that, the Kabutops and the Omanytes would be able to go through the underwater systems and come out and scurry around in the dry cave systems.
I love that word, scurry.
It's one of those words that sounds like what it means.
Yeah.
Yeah, which is great. Words should sound like what they mean.
I also happen to like snout, so I have no account for that.
Snout, yeah, Snout does too.
Yeah.
Weird. I go through that naming characters. I want a name to sound like the qualities of the character, but I don't want to just J.K. Rowling it and be like Draco Hate Fist.
That is epic. I am going to totally want to use that for something.
Draco Hate Fist?
Yes.
Draco Hate Fist. He's a man. Or is he?
He's a Drake.
There's another fan theory. Jeremy's like, oh God, here we go. There's another fan theory that Mount Moon, and this one, I don't know. I like it, but I don't know. I like our theories seem to cover all the bases, whereas this one doesn't address the fossils, doesn't address the moon, doesn't address the Clefairies. It's just kind of addresses this other thing, and I'm like, yeah, that's cool, but it's the only. Basically, it used to be a volcano. It's a dormant volcano. It erupted ages ago, and that's where the myths of like the asteroids was just like the volcano erupting. Covered the area in magma. The magma dried, became rock, which is why Pewter City is so close, and all their culture is based on rocks and stuff like that. Which I like that. That's cool thinking, but cool speculation. But I think,
well, here's the thing: an impact meteor would also have caused rock, lava, debris, dust, ash.
Exactly. I think that's a much more all-inclusive theory. But hey, to whoever came up with that theory, though, good on you. I like it. I just don't subscribe to it.
Right.
All right, so what Pokemon can be found in and around Mount Moon? That's the question.
I wouldn't know. All I ever fucking met were tiny little bats.
Zubats. Lots of Zubats.
Every other step.
This is what you remember about your journey through Mount Moon. You have to get Flash. You have to teach a Pokemon Flash because it's so dark in there.
Fuck that.
Or Barbarian your way through or use a map. But with Flash, you can light up the cave and see through it. I like to imagine it's actually... The Pokemon doesn't just flash and then the whole cave is just light. Like, I remember back in high school, like, John would be like, how does it stay light, though? And I'm like, I think that's just because it's a video game. I think it's, in real life, more like in Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, when you have that little bit of light around you while you walk around and the rest of the room is dark. You have your Charmander illuminating the area around you while you walk around.
I know you hate to use the anime as a reference for the most part, but... I like what they did with Pikachu when they had Pikachu learn Flash. His cheeks just kind of like flashed with electrical light and gave him, light to see by.
Sure, yeah. But it wouldn't, I don't think it would just be like, he used Flash and now the whole cave is lit up. Exactly.
Thing.
And I think in the real world, it wouldn't be powerful enough to just light the entire cave,
No, that would require nuclear levels of radiant discharge.
In the anime, that was actually the plot, was Team Rocket or whoever was stringing up lights throughout Mount Moon, and it was disturbing the wildlife, so the Zubats were like coming out and attacking people and stuff.
Fucking Zubats.
It is awful. Like, you know how we have a problem in the real world with like bats dying off? They sure don't have that problem in Kanto.
Yeah, no.
It's dark, and you have to bring repels because Zubats just barrage you non-fucking stop. Every 3 steps. It is the most annoying Pokemon in the game. So yeah, there's Zubats. And as we said, there's Clefairies.
Which I never found because Zubats.
And Clefairies are rare. It's rare to see them. So I like that about the game, that there's certain creatures that it's hard. You actually have to put in the time and the effort and go to an area and stay there.
That's great. I just blood-sucking parasites.
Or just trade. It can be assumed that there are Clefables there too. They're not and you can't catch any there in the game, but in the manga, in the anime, in almost every depiction, there are Clefables there too.
Yeah, they're like the bosses.
They're probably just, maybe they leave Mount Moon when they evolve and they show back up for the ceremonies. Or maybe they are just better at avoiding detection.
Yeah.
Bigger
wings, more magic, Poke
more
power,
experience.
Whatever.
Speaking of blood-sucking parasites, sorry, that was a great segue to another Pokemon in Mount Moon, but I had to talk about Clefable first. one of your favorites, Paris.
That is true.
And by inference, I would think that there are some Parasect there too, because Paris grow up eventually. Maybe it's just the fact that they didn't want to put them in the game, so you'd have to catch a Paris and evolve it.
Right.
But I would imagine there's Paris and Parasect there. Really cool little bug with a mushroom that is actually, it's the mushroom that's alive controlling the fucking bug. Oh,
Yeah.
So cool.
I had an alternative theory to why you could find no Parasect. You're in a cave system. Nutrients and food resources, water might be plentiful, but food resources might not be as plentiful in a cave structure unless Paris feeds on Zubat guano.
Yeah, probably. That makes sense. It's a mushroom.
Well,
Mushroom bug.
the bug would be the one that feeds.
Yeah,
and then
but also to
mushroom,
eat nutrients that would keep the mushroom alive and the bug body alive.
Right, which means that the primary host is the one who has to have the center of nutrition, because it still has to maintain its life functions.
Yeah.
And then whatever converted carbohydrates or sugars would be drawn by the mushroom.
But also in this Pokemon world, it's a heightened reality created by artists, and it would make sense thematically. I don't think they were thinking about it eating poop either. They just made up a creature and threw it in Mount Moon. Yeah. But it would make sense, though, that mushrooms grow off of poop. It would totally make sense if that's your headcanon, that the Paris survive off
it's
Zubat
also that
guano.
Insects also feed on poop.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, totally.
So, I mean, that's one thing. But even then, you're going to have competition for food. The Parasect is a much more high-order form of life, has a larger body, has far more advanced pincer tools. It's a larger mushroom as well. Its resources would need to be further maintained.
So it
would have to migrate out of the cave system.
Maybe the Parises are born in Mount Moon. I know we're going really out there with headcanon, but it makes sense. You have to do this. They're creatures. It's fun. And they're animals. They have to survive some way, and what you're saying makes total sense. And you do find Parasects in forests, right? There are forests where you run into them, right?
I believe so.
Maybe the Safari Zone? I don't know. It would make sense then that they would have the babies in the mountain, so they would go back to the mountain even to have babies. But then Parasects would go find a forest that was much more rich in detritus and nutrients and stuff like that to subsist off of and have this lush ecosystem to live off of. And that is just satisfying as a idea too, like to think about, like you could do a story about like a Paris that like it grows up in the caves and eventually it learns that the Paris does this, the animals do this, and like when it evolves it goes and finds its own home. Like, so cool.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it's a mountain, there's Geodudes there. And according to the Electric Tale of Pikachu manga, there are also Onyxes, or at least an Onyx. That would be cool if it was like one Onyx.
That would be cool, like the Alpha Rock.
Ah, I like that, the Alpha Rock. I'm going to name an Onyx that in honor.
Huh.
And Sandshrews and Sandslashes can be found there too.
I, again, never experienced that personally.
Just Zubats.
Zubats.
I remember running into a few Geodudes.
Nothing.
You'd be like Zubat, Geodude, Zubat, Geodude, Zubat, Geodude, Zubat.
Now all you have to do is remove all of those Geodudes, and that's my Pokemon journey in Mount Moon.
Zubat. Missing no.
I would have prayed for a missing no.
Well, no, then you fight 100 Zubats, and then you get to fight Mew3.
Yeah, the product of Misty and Mewtwo.
No, I do remember that fan fiction, and I've actually searched for it just to satisfy my nostalgic curiosity. It was horrible and awful, but I remember it, and because I remember it, I want to find it, and I can't. That was horrible. That was awful. Like when 13-year-olds try to write adult stories, like try to prove they're adult by putting fucked up shit. Anyway, with the Hoenn or Sinnoh sound, you can also find Makuhita, Absol, Chingling, or Bronzor there. How do you think that works? Do you think that's just a gameplay thing, or do you think that there's some way to entertain this in canon? The idea... Now, you've got a device, right, that would just play a little tune, and that would attract Pokemon from that region?
Yep. There are certain beings, like animals in our world, that are hyper-aware of human presence, and they will do everything they can to avoid them, unless you have a lure.
Yes.
Something that draws their attention from their instincts despite their need for self-preservation.
So what are they doing there? Or are just Maku, are these Pokemon that live in Mount Moon regularly? Are we too, because I have a hard time accepting that Mount Moon's got a self-sustaining population of Makuhita and Absol and Bronzors and Chinglings.
Well, you also have to remember that by that time, while it seems like a remake, it actually isn't.
Cultural dissemination has been so much more prevalent. People have been
it's
traveling and coming over.
Thing. So you are further in the future.
Damien went to fucking Sinnoh, and then he came back and was like, "Hey, I don't need this Pokemon anymore, and get the fuck out of here, Absol. Every time I bring you out, something bad happens."
Yeah, sort of.
"Hey, you can't abandon your Pokemon." And then Absol's like, "Dude, fuck you, kid. I'll be fine. That dude was a dick. Don't waste your time with him. Never give up on your dreams, Absol. My dreams are of horror and catastrophe. You don't know me, child. Keep walking. Gary's getting ahead." Everyone knows it's Absol. Existence is futile. Oh my God. Has it happened? Jeremy, has it happened?
What?
Do we finally have our first Silph Radio character?
Oh, God. Please
The
don't let it be.
apathetic Absol.
Fine. Fuck it.
But maybe not, because I'm referencing it, and this shit has to happen naturally. Dude, I like the apathetic Absol.
Ha!
I like him.
No.
All right. The apathetic Absol. He lives in Mount Moon.
Ha!
Oh, that sounds like the beginning of a fucking limerick. The apathetic Absol. He lives in Mount Moon. All that he knows is despair, strife, and doom.
I died a little inside.
You don't like it?
Thank you.
You don't like it?
No, I like it in that I died a little inside.
Oh, well, yeah, that's the point.
Yeah.
So those are all the Pokemon you can find in Mount Moon, but I think the surrounding area is just as important. Route 3 and Route 4, which you can see the mountain, and that's where a lot of the craters are in Route 3, and like it's all part of Mount. I think the surrounding area is part of Mount Moon, you know. So you got your Pidgeys, you got your Rattatas, you got your Raticates, Spearows, Sandshrews, Jigglypuffs, of course. That's another one that this is one of the only areas you can find Jigglypuffs.
Yep.
Was it the only area in Kanto?
Or I think so, but I'm not sure.
Mankey, Ekans, Arbok, Zubat, Nidoran, which, again, Moonstone, that's consistent. Goldeen, Seaking, Tentacool, Magikarp. Also, it's right around Mount Moon where that asshole tries to sell you a Magikarp for $500. Can we talk about that guy for a minute? We'll probably never have another chance to. He's not going to get his own episode.
Fuck that guy.
Magikarp might, but...
Yeah, no. I don't even want to give him the dignity of talking about him.
I'm curious, though. Like, what do you think... You know who I'm picturing? And it sucks because this...
I'm kind of picturing the Billy Fusillo guy.
Yes.
Yeah.
Totally. I was picturing Craig. Not Craig Lewis, but a friend that me and you used to have.
Oh,
I'm picturing scumbag Craig.
Yeah. He doesn't seem as enthusiastic as the Magikarp salesman was. I definitely get more of a used car salesman vibe from that guy.
At first I was picturing somebody that'll ask you for a cigarette and then try to sell you it, and then try to sell you nitrous and do nitrous with you.
Yeah, no, this guy's totally more like hey, this Magikarp's going to grow up to be huge.
You know what's funny is Billy Fusillo isn't just a local reference. A lot of people know Billy Fusillo.
Yeah.
I don't know if you're listening and you don't live anywhere near Syracuse, New York. You should let us know. Do you know who we're talking about when we say Billy Fusillo? Because was it you that told me that there were commercials in Florida?
Mm-hmm.
He lives in Syracuse. The official original Fusillo Automart is in Syracuse. He's just franchised like a motherfucker. And if you don't know who we're talking about, it was local commercials when we were growing up with this goofball. Like, he was a goofball, like, kind of heavy Italian dude.
Oh, no, I got to see him. I got to meet him.
Yeah.
And dude is a majestic giant.
But on the commercials, you know, there'd be the straight man, and he'd be like, "Hey, I'm Tom Park here from Fusillo Automart, telling you can come get your new Dodge Durango for under $399 and down payment." And I don't know fucking car talk. And all 4-wheel drive.
It's gonna be huge.
And then Billy Fusillo would. Towards the end, they started phasing out his presence, and that would just be it. He would say it at the end of the commercial.
Yeah.
But originally, he would be like, Tom, shut the fuck up, Tom. And he'd be like interrupting Tom. And they got rid of Tom eventually, too.
Yeah.
I remember in the heyday, I got to dig up some of these tapes and upload them to YouTube. But he'd just be like, fuck you, Tom. No, Tom, shut up, Tom. It's crazy. It's huge. You got to get your ass down here. I got to sell these fucking cars. He wouldn't say fuck, but he might as well. He might as well have. So maybe his Tom is the apathetic Absol.
No. It's a tragedy he never found.
So moving on, you can find Gyarados, Horsey, Slowpoke, Psyduck, Krabby, Hoot Hoot, Pineco, Wurmple, and if you play the Hoenn or Sinnoh sound, you can also find Plusle, Minun, Shinx, Lanoon, Whismur, Bidoof, and Buizel.
Okay.
Plusle and Minun, I think, is interesting. You think they're attracted to, like, the energy of the Moonstones?
I can get down with that, yeah.
That makes sense. And then swarms. Remember swarms when Pokemon that aren't normally in that area would just, like, migrate and swarm that area?
Yep.
You can find Baltoys and Gulpins, which is interesting. Baltoy is like that weird artifact-like Pokemon, right? So that's
the one that
interesting.
eventually evolves into Claydol.
Yeah, again, got to be attracted to the energy of the place. What about Gulpin? I don't remember much about Gulpin. That's the weird poison balloon, right?
Yeah.
So they're attracted because Craig's hanging out outside the Pokemon Center and he wants to do nitrous. So he huffing Gulpins is like... That is Gulpin, right? He evolves the Swalot?
Yeah.
Is its name right?
Yes.
Yeah, scumbag Craig hangs out outside the mart. And eventually, when Gulpins are in season, he has a bunch of them. It's not that they swarmed there; it's that he brought them there on his bed of his truck, and he's trying to sell them to other people.
Yeah, he's just releasing them out into the wild if they don't sell.
There's a lot of those hikers got to be like rednecks, so like maybe you can just sell them to some rednecks that like all right. And then in the later games, this wasn't in the original Red and Blue, but later on, I think it was in Heart Gold and Soul Silver. I don't know if it was in Fire Red and Leaf Green. I don't think it was. But near the summit of the mountain is an area known as Mount Moon Square. Do you know what I'm talking about? It's hard to find.
Yeah, no, I don't think I've been there.
It's in Gold and Silver. Not just Heart Gold and Soul Silver, but Gold and Silver had it there too. Mm-hmm. Mount Moon is actually set up a little differently in Gold and Silver. It's not as complex, but there's this hidden area that if you find it, there's a little shop. It's not a Pokemon mart. It's like a house, but there's a shop run out of it. And there's a little pond, and every Monday night between, I think it's 8 p.m. and 4 a.m. Tuesday, the Clefairy show up. There's like 3 Clefairy or whatever there dancing around a meteor or something, or dancing around the pond. I think they're dancing around a meteor, and you can see the reflection of the full moon in the pond. I don't know what it is, but there's something about this area that just captivates my imagination so much. Thinking about the person that lives there, that runs that shop, is probably this like cool old dude that just like set up shop there. He likes being alone, but he likes the occasional surprise visitor, and he runs the shop, and he never knows when someone's going to show up because it's not often found because it's hard to find, and only tough trainers go through Mount Moon, not youngster Joey,
Yeah.
Somebody every once in a while will stumble upon it, and he'll be like, hey, whoa, sit down. You look tired. Like, hey, this lemonade's on me. Like, take a look at our menu,
Please.
Menu. He's like, I'm fucking cooking lunch. Basically, this is what I'm having for lunch. Would you like some? Haven't had a visitor in a while. No, but and there's like also in that pond up there is the only place in that area you can find Poliwag, which I just find interesting. There's no water in Mount Moon to fish in, but there is water around it, and there's no Poliwag there. But in the little pond on the top of the mountain, near the summit of the mountain, it's like all enclosed by rock. Like you get up there through a tunnel, so it's almost like an atrium.
Like a volcanic entrance.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if it's the top of the mountain. It might be. But the Poliwag are only there in that pond, which is like maybe he has his little like koi fish pond. Like he brought those Poliwag because he likes Poliwag and he likes his simple life. He likes watching the Poliwag swim around in the pond, and then every Monday night makes himself a cup of tea, opens the shades, and watches the Clefairy out there dance in the reflection of the full moon. Which is also interesting that there's a full moon once a week in the Pokemon universe as opposed to once a month.
That thing must skyrocket.
What do you mean?
Like the way that the lunar cycle happens.
Oh, around the Earth, you're saying? Yeah, because a bigger planet wouldn't... I don't know. That's really weird.
It's got to mean that like a year passes more quickly, too.
Yeah, well, you know, an hour in our time is a day, right?
Yeah.
Or is it something like that?
Something around there.
I don't know. But then again, well, it depends on the game, because certain games, there's seasons, and Sun and Moon is all a day, right? So I don't know. But that just captivates my imagination. Like, the whole reason I love Pokemon is because it captivates... These little corners of the world captivate my imagination. And, like, I like thinking about that, the dude that runs that shop's daily life. He's probably the only person that sees Clefairy once a week. Yeah,
he got the setup. He's the one who's like, now, fuck these suckers and going through and trying to find Zubats. I'm going to just set up shop here. I'm done. I'm going to stay here.
It's awesome. I love
Every once in a while, he just throws a Pokeball. Wonders if one of them is going to come in and get... You know.
I don't think he even throws a Pokeball. I bet the Clefairy trust him. I bet they warily trust him because I bet he's just like, I don't want to bother him. I'm like creating this whole character. I have no reason to believe he's not just some old asshole that's like, give me your money. Did you buy the dude's Magikarp? He's working for me. It's scumbag Craig. No, but I see maybe he's come out before and made his presence known. Because when you show up, the Clefairy run away in the game. And they maybe stop and look at him because maybe they're too smart to not know that he was there. They know that's a human house. You know what I mean? They know a human came there.
Building spaceships, they better fucking know that it's a house.
Maybe he even made... No, he probably didn't make the pond. Well, maybe the Clefairies made the pond.
Maybe it's a naturally occurring effect of moisture collecting in the bowl of the mountain.
But I like the idea that it was made to reflect the moon. You know what I mean? Like the Clefairies. I like the idea that the Clefairies did it, and then he built his house there. Maybe he built his house there after he like had to come and be like, hey, Clefairies, like am I cool? Like he set up a tent and waited for Monday, and then like every week he would show up or something and just be like, hey,
you're putting a lot of like stock in this whole man.
You had this whole thing about a meteor hitting and the area around the land formed the moon, and that's why Clefairies. We know the creators didn't think about this stuff. It's fun to. That's why this podcast exists.
That's not what I mean. I mean you're attributing this guy to like sagely like.
That's the character.
I love you.
Well, you got to think. The reason I'm thinking that is because who would naturally be the person that lives up there, and I think it would be a very patient, wise old person. Because the Clefairies still go up there and dance. They must trust him. They're smart. We've established that. He spends all that time up there by himself. Like, sure, he could be a crazy person, but
there's also the point that they're kind of like magical creatures, and he's an old guy. Even if they didn't trust him,
yeah, fuck this old human.
Yeah, it's like if
he ain't shit.
If he does something, we'll literally metronome him and hit him with like dragon ascent.
I like it though. I just like it. It captivates my imagination.
Yeah.
Hey, you want to have your imagination captivated, Jeremy?
Sure.
We've been doing something really fucking cool on my other podcast, Fairpoint. I know you've heard the first part, but you haven't heard the second or third yet, have you?
No.
We're doing an epic 3-part trilogy. It just finished. We uploaded the final episode very recently. It's called Guy Fawkes Monster Hunter, The Search for Klaus trilogy. It's our second attempt at doing a Guy Fawkes Monster Hunter trilogy, but it's a different. The first attempt was just funny skits that in the end we were like, oh cool, let's make this a trilogy and write a third one to close it out. I have an idea for a third one. This was created with the intent of writing a 3-part story with a beginning, a middle, and end. And it was also written to further our continuity that we've been building over 120 episodes, but hopefully be accessible to new listeners. I don't know if that's the case or not. So if you are a new listener and you're not familiar with our Guy Fawkes character on Fairpoint Podcast, or who Gernhardt and Klaus, the time-traveling Nazis, are, you should go check out Guy Fawkes Monster Hunter. It's for Pokemon fans. Pokemon Go plays a role in the story. It's a big part of the story, not the biggest part, but it is a part. It is a theme in the story, and it's a lot of fun. I'm very proud of it. I think it's one of the best things that me and Craig have done, if not the best thing. It's better than our 100th episode in my idea, and if you listen to all 3 of them, it's like 2 hours long. So there's a lot there, and it's really fun.
Pretty damn badass.
I put a lot of work into it, and I think it only gets better with each chapter. The 3rd chapter took so much work, and I'm so proud of it. So I hope you guys like it, and we plan on doing more like this in the future. And the only way we can accomplish all that is with your help. We need your support. We want to make this our job, not because we're money hungry, not because we want a bunch of money, but because we want to make more podcasts. And it's hard to do that when you have to work another full-time job. This podcast is a full-time job. Keeping them edited, doing the research, like we can do so many more of them.
Help us to entertain you.
Yes. Like our Facebook pages, Silph Radio Podcast and Fairpoint Podcast. Little things like that. Follow us on Twitter at Fairpoint Pod. If you're listening on iTunes, clicking 5 stars is the biggest help you can do. You don't have to do anything but tap it with your finger if it's a phone, or like click it if it's a computer. If you're not listening with iTunes, I don't know. If there's something on the program, that'd be cool. If you can leave a review, that's cool. Any of these little things you can do to help us is a gigantic help. I want to make more Silph Radios. I want Silph Radios to come out at least once a month. Preferably twice a month, but it's hard to do. So I'm like you. I want it to be regular. I know that's the main complaint we get, is that it's such a scattershot release.
I also enjoy being regular.
Well, you got to keep that Parasect fed, man.
Absolutely.
The life of a Pokemon trainer is not pretty. That's something people don't think about. You got to carry some foul food sometimes, depending on the Pokemon. If you got a Parasect, you have to buy big bags of shit to feed it. Like, for real. If you have a Garbodor, that's going to stink.
Yeah, unless you legitimately just shove that bitch in a ball.
What if it
keep
reeked?
it in
What if the
suspended
data
animation?
even reeked? Like, from the Pokeball, it still was like, oh, it still smells.
I would find that hilarious. And you'd be like, you're that trainer. Okay.
No, I'm not. It's just scumbag Craig. And the camera like pans to the side, so you see him standing behind their Pokemon that's following them.
Yep.
From a different perspective, he's like, "Hey, want to buy a Gulpin?"
Oh God.
Magikarps, 500 Magikarps.
Magikarp's my baby.
Do you like hip hop? I just need a donation. Hey, we hope you enjoyed this edition of Silph Radio Podcast. We'll be back again soon with another new episode. Jeremy, a pleasure.
Thank you.
As always. Here, Jeremy, on Fair Enough Podcast, we are talking about Star Trek. We're talking about whether or not life is a simulation. We're going to talk about that soon, whether or not the universe is a simulation. That's coming soon. And, hey, have a great night, guys, or day, or have a great night when it gets there. It'll be night sooner or later.
Have a great time.
See you next full moon, hopefully.
Oh.